Thank you. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Wherever you are in the world, good afternoon or good morning or good evening. Welcome to the Windows Virtual Desktop Tech Fest. My name is Shabaz Darr, and I am going to be presenting around a use case that I've done. Before I start with my presentation, I just want to quickly say thank you to the WVD Tech partners. So NetApp, Nerdio, iGel, AMD and Azeep. So, without sponsors, these type of events would be very difficult. So thank you to those partners. Quickly, just give you an overview of who I am, for those who don't know. So my name is Shabaz Darr, as I mentioned. I'm a senior infrastructure consultant at Netcompany in the UK. I'm working in IT for over 15 years, and 7 of those as a consultant. And my main focus is on Azure Endpoint Manager and obviously WVD. So my session is called Lessons Learned from the Battlefield, WVD in a Pandemic. And essentially what I'm going to be discussing is, it's not very much a technical overview of anything, but it's more an insight into some experience I had of deploying Windows Virtual Desktop very early on during COVID-19 and the pandemic, and the experiences that I learned, the lessons that I learned, and how I overcame some of those issues as well. So just a quick introduction as to what I'll be discussing. I'll be going through, so this isn't about one use case, this is like an overview of several use cases. So I'll be going through the sort of requirement and problem that clients and customers were having very early on during COVID-19. I'll explain why clients that I worked with went with Windows Virtual Desktop, and then some of the challenges I had during the various implementations that I did, and obviously the lessons that I learned from them. And finally, just an overview of where are these clients now on their WVD journey. So the first part is obviously the requirement and problem. One major requirement was obviously right at the beginning of the pandemic. Clients were panicking a bit because, especially in the UK, there was a problem with people having to work from home. The UK government was going to obviously shut down the economy practically, and they were going to ask people to work from home, and a lot of businesses could not support that. So they needed some sort of solution that would support being able to send their users home. Excuse me. There were also very tight timescales. For those of you who remember, pretty much this time last year, there was obviously COVID was really starting to come to the forefront, and there was a lot of rumours around the various lockdowns in various countries. So a lot of businesses and clients only had a matter of weeks really to make a decision and also implement something that would allow them to support working from home. Whatever solution they went with, it had to be robust. It had to be scalable. It had to be secure as well, which is my next point. Security is massive in IT, as we're all aware, and having people working from various locations in their own homes or wherever they are is much more difficult to manage. So, we had to, security was a big requirement. And finally, a lot of the customers I was working with, who were small to medium, had a requirement for on-premises integration. So they needed to make sure whatever solution they went with could integrate with their already existing infrastructure. So obviously, a lot of the clients I worked with went with Windows Virtual Desktop. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this presentation. So the question is, why did they go with Windows Virtual Desktop? As we're aware, WVD can be accessed from anywhere. You essentially just need an internet connection and the right identity and the access rights. So that was a huge bonus, and that was a huge positive for Windows Virtual Desktop, that users could go home and work from anywhere and still access their WVD resources. can be implemented in a very short time. At the time when Windows Virtual Desktop is over a year old now. Right at the beginning of the pandemic, it was still in its fall version, I believe. So it was all managed through and deployed through PowerShell. And even back then, when it was through PowerShell, it was still fairly quick to deploy. Obviously, now it's all available through the portal and the GUI, which makes it even more easier. And it's easy. It's much more simpler to deploy in a short space of time. It's robust. It's highly available, and it scales in out. In a matter of minutes. and that was another decision that made a lot of the clients I was working with decide to go with Windows Virtual Desktop. The security was a big aspect as well, and being able to secure WVD with multi-factor authentication and conditional access was something that a lot of clients really liked, and it was another point that pushed them towards Windows Virtual Desktop. And with Windows Virtual Desktop being essentially it's hosted in the infrastructure as a service element of Microsoft Azure, there's that capability to have a VPN gateway, so you can connect it to your on-premises and have that integration. So if for customers that had file servers, even they wanted to do the Active Directory integration with WVD, because of the VPN from Azure to on-premises, it allowed them to integrate and have that availability there. So I just wanted to do a bit of an overview of some of the implementation challenges that I had when obviously deploying with various customers. So one thing at the early stages was the Windows 10 image. Again, this is quite streamlined now when you can get tools like Nerdio, which we've already seen earlier this morning, which make this much simpler. But back when back I said about a year ago when I first started working with WVD, this was a major challenge, as a lot of businesses had sort of an on-premises sort of image deployment, be it SCCM or WDS. So they already had a ready-built sort of image. However, with Windows Virtual Desktop supporting multi-session, we had to kind of recreate that. So it was a challenge getting that to that sort of image to the specs and the requirements that different customers wanted. And obviously going through the process of capturing that image and the sort of image management was one of the sort of challenges we had. One bit of a funny story, and this is something I learned. One of the big lessons I learned was originally when I remember one customer, when I created the first image for them, I unfortunately did it just in normal Windows 10 OS rather than the multi-session supported one. So when we'd done the image and we actually deployed it in our test environment, only one or two people could log into it at the same time. And it's through that, luckily we found out of the test phase, so we were able to quickly recreate the image using correct OS. But again, that was something I learned quickly, and I have not made that mistake again since. So multi-factor authentication and users was a big challenge, and the implementation wasn't the challenge here. It was getting the users to buy into MFA, and with some clients, especially the smaller to medium business size clients, they hadn't used multi-factor authentication before, so there was a lot of documentation and training needed to sort of get this across to the users and for them to learn how to properly register and manage that MFA. So this was quite a big challenge because it meant creating very detailed, granular documentation in some cases. Again, the on-premises integration was a challenge as well, and again, not the implementation of the VPN. That was probably the simplest part, but making sure that the AD integration was working, and a lot of the file shares, and making sure the latency and all that sort of stuff that I had to think about. So getting the on-premise integration right, and again to spec and requirements, was another implementation challenge that I faced during that time. Finally, just to kind of summarize, where a lot of the clients I were working with again were very new to the cloud. If anything, they were just kind of starting their cloud journey. So they might have had Exchange Online, or they might have been using a bit of Intune to manage devices. However, using a full sort of desktop rather than your traditional laptop and desktops was a massive step up for a massive change for a lot of these businesses and clients. And they started off very small as implementation. So I think the largest I might have done was about 200 to 300 users. And again, in small, again, because it was right at the start of the pandemic, a lot of businesses were, as we are aware, were furloughing people. So they were more kind of making sure their key staff who were staying working had access. But a lot of the customers that I've kind of remote working fully, now they've got a fully remote working force. A lot of the clients, so they've gone from having maybe 20 or 30 people to having hundreds of people. So working from home is now normal for them. It's not like a shock to the system. It's not strange. It's been, obviously, we're into over a year now since a lot of us were working from home. MFA is still an issue, unfortunately, and again, it's not the deployment of it. It's getting users used to having to do that second form of authentication. You know, even though it's been over a year, it's still taking users a bit of time to grasp that, you know, when they log in, they still have to have their mobile device close to them so they can do that second bit of authentication. So that's still causing an issue, but it's something that we're continuing to teach our users, and it's just still a learning curve for them. And you know what? WVD has saved lives because it's allowed businesses to send their staff home and keep them safe rather than having to make them coming to the offices traveling by public transport. So it's, you know, it's saved lives and allowed businesses to keep their staff safe and healthy. So it's a very short presentation, but it was something that I thought was a very good use case and an interesting subject to present. So I do thank you everyone for watching, and you know, I'm more than happy to take any questions people might have around some of the deployments that I did early on. I'd appreciate if you could evaluate the session as well. I'm always happy to take feedback, you know, as long as it's productive. So the recordings will obviously be available in early March, I believe, or sometime in March. So thank you very much. I want to thank the organisers of the Windows Virtual Desktop Tech Fest as well. Thanks to Stefan, Simon, and Patrick, of course. So yep, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shabaz. We still got 15 minutes left, so
yeah, I'm happy.
I don't know if there's anything you want to tell us, or if you want to.
No, just that. Yeah. So I know my presentation was a bit short, but I feel like it's a subject that you know, there's a lot of tech information out there around the virtual desktop. I feel a bit of a bit of first line experience, especially at the start of COVID, might be interesting for people. Like I said, I've done deployments since then, and they've been a lot more calmer. There was a specific health organisation that I did quite a big deployment for, and literally we had 2 weeks to deploy it at the time. And again, it just shows what Microsoft and Windows Virtual Desktop has done for businesses during such a difficult period with COVID-19. It's been a massive change for all of us. I mean, look, we're having a virtual conference. Do you know, it's you know, a year ago, 18 months ago, did we ever think we'd have a virtual conference like this? And it just goes to show that, you know, how far technology has come in such a short space of time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So maybe, well, let me check if there are some questions. Thanks for sharing your experience. Let me publish it, hold on. Do you have any experience in patching WVD shared pools?
In patching?
Yeah.
So yeah, the way I've done it previously is using the sort of image update. So that's where we've kind of had to provision a kind of a VM with the original image, patch that, and then redeploy that to host pools. I did a demo a couple of days ago for a client where we had an image with an old version. I think it was 18 or 1809 maybe on Windows Virtual Desktop. And while they were logged on and working, we upgraded the image and it provisioned some new session hosts while they were working. And then when they logged off and logged back on, they got the new image. with the updated version. I think it was the latest version of Windows. Is it the 204 or whatever, 2004, whatever we're on now? So yeah, it's still kind of the way I did it. I think with tools like Nerdio, it's a lot more streamlined and a lot more automated. But I've kind of used the sort of the Azure sort of kind of more manual way of updating. I believe there's more support coming in for WVD with Endpoint Manager. So I don't know if the update rings is there yet, but that'll be obviously something interesting if that's not already released.
Yeah. So there is indeed Engine support for the single session. Multi-session is not supported yet, I think.
Right. Okay.
So that's one way of like patching your WVD environment, because then you can use, especially for the persistent ones, you can use Windows Update for Business, for example. But I still think indeed for the multi-session one, it's all based on the image. So you have to recreate your image. Start with the vanilla one from the Azure Marketplace. Fully patched, fully updated. Add your applications and configurations to it, and indeed deploy or add new session hosts. I think there are two ways. There's another question like rip and replace. So you could do I will remove this session host and we'll recreate it with the same name, or you can add like new session host based on a new naming or a certain release number or something else, and just drain the old ones and remove those.
That's how I did it. I think when I did it, because I created a snapshot before I did the sysprep of my image, so I was able to essentially just create a VM from that disk snapshot, and that at least had the latest image on. So I was able to just use on top of that, just do the Windows update any applications, and then use that to create the more new, the latest image.
Yeah, and you can always go back to one of those snapshots to maybe replace something or add or remove another thing. There are some questions. I will publish them also. It's using latest from shared image gallery. Yeah, I think that depends if you're using the shared image gallery. I think more and more people are using the shared image gallery, especially because you also have the version control. You can exclude it from the latest, include it from the latest. So you can deploy it to your test environment. If that one is approved to the user acceptance testing, you can like promote that image to be the latest version, and you can indeed choose that image for your production environment. How would you recommend it scaling up and down? Most companies out of ours only need a small percentage of the session hosts.
So again, it depends how you want to do it. There's obviously the automation that you can do with Azure, where you can use the scale sets there. I mean, again, that's what kind of we've kind of used in previous projects. We've used the automation within Azure to scale out as and when certain triggers are hit. I mean, there's also, I think there's breadth first and there's depth first in the multi-session. And with the depth first, it obviously it logs you all into one single host until that hits a certain limit. And I think that's more cost effective. So you can potentially have hosts in maybe a shutdown state until they're needed. And again, I think that's kind of through all the automation that can be achieved.
Yeah, totally agree with that one. So, Shabaz, what are you using for your scaling solution? Do you use the Microsoft native scaling solution? Do you use the Nerdio or native VDS or?
So we use a Microsoft native one. We are starting to do some trials with Nerdio though, and I'm hoping that I can start using more of that tool because it does look amazing, and the small kind of demos that I've seen and had do look really good. For now, we're using the native, but I'd like to think in the future we can start utilizing Nerdio.
Yeah. And so when you're using the native Microsoft solution, did you guys change anything or just as is?
Just as is, unless we've had specific customer requirements, we've just kind of done it as is, kind of out of the box. But again, I think it's customized. We can customize it as, depending on the requirements. But at the moment, we've just had as is.
Yeah, and the scaling is based on the number of users per CPU, I think.
But yeah, it is, per CPU. And again, I think that's a good sort of default. It's a good default to have, because that's where performance starts to deteriorate.
Yeah, and in combination with that, you always have the max session limit on your host pool, so you know how many sessions you can allow on one session host. And at the end, with downscaling, well, probably you will be left with like 1 or 2 sessions on a machine, and then you can send a notification to that user that he or she needs to log off. You can shut down that machine, and as soon as they log on again, they will land on another machine.
Exactly, yeah.
So, well, maybe we can do, there's another question. How cost effective is Nerdio? Well, I know there is on the partner stage, there was a session from Bas van Kaan from Nerdio. I think with cost effectiveness, we're talking about 2 things. We got the management costs, and the compute and storage costs. And I think with tools like Nerdio, but also NetApp VDS, but even with the WVD admin from Marshall Meurer, I think those costs are based on both those options. So optimizing your compute, shutting down machines which aren't being used, and on the other end, well, I know with Nerdio you can just easily swap out your images. You can schedule it. If you use the Microsoft native solution, you will have to do that manual, or you can create it by yourself via, like, for example, Azure DevOps, GitHub Actions. But then again, you need some resources internally to build that solution yourself. So, well, in my opinion, third-party tools like Nerdio are a great way to save money on your WVD deployment, based on the management side, but also the compute costs.
Yeah, there's a lot of, from what I remember, there's a lot of automation built into Nerdio and very easy to set up.
Yep, absolutely. So, Shabaz, the next few months, what is a feature of WVD you're looking forward to?
So I'm looking forward to the single sign-on coming. I believe that's on the roadmap. I don't know if it's the next few months, but that's been, I'll call it a bugbear, a bit of a bugbear for a lot of clients. I'm doing a lot of demos for public sector sort of healthcare, and the single sign-on. So once you log into your, once you log into your session, before you click on the actual desktop session, having that single sign-on when you double click for it to log in, I think that's something that a lot of my clients I'm working with are screaming out for. So that's something I'm looking forward to, because I think that'll almost be the last sort of piece of the puzzle for Windows Virtual Desktop in sort of healthcare. Because again, people who work in healthcare in the UK anyway they've not got a lot of time, so they don't want to be signing in all the time. So single sign-on is definitely something that I feel will be massive benefit, and that's something I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, and it's so the single sign-on which Microsoft is going to release is based on ADFS. It is already available for the fall release. Okay. It is working for the fall release, and the spring release is indeed on the roadmap. And I think if you want a single sign-on experience at this moment, I think there is only one thing you can do, and that's using the IGEL OS.
Yeah.
Because that, if you log in, you will subscribe to the feed, and it will automatically log you in to the session hosts. But indeed, that's one of the things I'm also looking forward to. But also the start on demand, especially for the VDI environment.
Yeah.
So just shut down all the machines which aren't being used. Nobody's logged on, and as soon as a user needs to log on, with the same client, it will automatically turn on that machine, and you can create a policy to shut it down automatically after the user logs off. You can even do it with the FS Logic, I think. There's also a configuration option to shut the machine down after you have logged off.
Another big cost saver as well. That'll be a cost saver.
Yeah. Let me check if there are some new questions in the meantime. No, not yet. Let me check over here. Well, I don't know if you want to share anything or.
No.
No,
sorry. Sorry about it being a short presentation.
Oh no, it's okay. But I thought, well, maybe we can we can try to fill the next 10 minutes. There's no, and I think we're already at the point for the latest presentation from Travis. It's 3:40. Yeah, we'll have to wait 10 minutes. Well, Shabaz, I don't have anything to add to your presentation.
No problem. Thank you.
I would like to thank you for your time and all your effort.